I'm Romel Foster-Owens, and welcome to Inside Black Hollywood. When William Shakespeare laid his pen to paper, little did he dream that his plays would be hailed as masterpieces and performed throughout the world. Here in San Diego, the Old Globe Theater has performed a Shakespearean festival for the past 27 years, receiving national recognition. As we go inside the theater, many of us will recognize William Marshall for his film credits, although theater critics have followed his stage career as far back as 1958 when he portrayed the part of the Lord in London's production of Green Pastures, and on to his excellent performance as King Saul in the Broadway production of Javelin. William Marshall, as Shakespeare's Othello in Europe, New York, and Los Angeles, has won him critical acclaim as being the most magnificent living Othello in our time. San Diego marks Mr. Marshall's 5th appearance as Othello, yet it is his first in over 8 years, thus lending a sense of freshness that mixes well with his grace and dignity Mr. Marshall gives his Othello. You, the audience, will see and feel William Marshall the man, as well as theater and motion picture star, on Inside Black Hollywood, right after these commercial moments. Hello, I'm Romel Foster-Owens, and welcome back to Inside Black Hollywood. At the top of the show, you got an opportunity to see a little bit about William Marshall, but most naturally, it's always better to see him in the flesh. So I would like to introduce to you Mr. William Marshall.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm well.
Just well?
The better for seeing you.
Oh, well, I feel flattered. I feel fantastic. Talking of Othello, which a lot of people really do not know that much about Shakespeare. I can remember in high school reading Shakespeare and not understanding it. How can we better understand Othello? Because that is one of his most popular works.
Well, I guess the best way, if reading doesn't suffice, is to go and see the play and hopefully a movie, which gives us a more intimate view of it. I guess moving pictures speak a little louder than the word somehow, even though the word does ignite the imagination. But seeing it, just seeing it.
From seeing you perform Othello, I can understand what you're saying, because I did understand it much better. Of course, I was amazed by your grace, and because you had on a lot of robes, which we will see later, but your grace across the stage, and I had known you through other works, but it's very different to see you there in a live performance. What is Othello the man to you as the actor?
Well, to begin with, certainly he was a man who found himself in an alien society. He had given himself to this society in terms of his skills as a military man, and had hired his services out to the Venetian state, and had won several wars for them. And at the commencement of the play, we find him being given another assignment. And that brings into focus a conflict, because he had been lionized by one of the senators of Venice, who had a very beauteous daughter named Desdemona, as you know, and they fell in love with each other, as people say, and as people sometimes do, and eloped. And this man, Brabantio, the father of Desdemona, who seemingly had loved Othello as a man and identified with him and lived a vicarious existence through Othello's experiences, began to hate him, and all the vileness that you'd associate with the profoundest racists in the country began to come out of this man after the elopement.
Why did he hate Othello?
Because he had taken away his first lady, in a sense. I think that Desdemona's mother was dead, and apart from being Brabantio's daughter, I think she served as a very meaningful part of his household. I think she was one of the most attractive ornaments in his crown, so to say.
Speaking of Desdemona, we have a film clip which shows that she obviously was in love with you, and whatever her father said. Right, with Othello.
Yes.
Okay, with Othello. And it did not matter to her what her father said. So we would like to see that film clip now, the Cypress scene from Othello.
Oh, my fair warrior.
My dear Othello.
It gives me wonder great is my content to see you here before me. Oh, my soul's joy. If after every tempest come such calms, may the winds blow till they waken death, and let the laboring bark climb hills of seas Olympus high, and duck again as low as hell's from heaven. Oh, if 'twere now to die, 'twere now to be most happy. For I fear my soul hath a content so absolute that not another comfort like to this succeeds in unknown fate.
May the heavens forbid but that our loves and comfort should increase even as our days do grow.
Amen to that sweet powers. I cannot speak enough of this content. It stops me here. It's too much of joy. And this, the greatest discords be that e'er our hearts shall make. News, friends! Our wars are done! The Turks are drowned! Honey, you shall be well desired in Cyprus. I've found great love amongst them. My sweet, I prattle out of fashion, and I dote in mine own comforts. Come, Desdemona. Once more well met at Cyprus.
I'd say the audience is pleased by your performance.
Well, I'm delighted. It's the first time I've ever seen it.
It's very different. Now, what happens later in the play between you and Desdemona?
Well, there's Iago, who happens to be the ensign, or the first sergeant, one might say, of Othello, who is, for reasons that are not really explained, not to my satisfaction at least, by the playwright, very envious of Othello and desirous of destroying him. And it seems to have commenced with his romance with Desdemona. And I figured over the years, thinking about the part, thinking about the play, that it should be entitled The Jealousy of Iago, as opposed to Othello and his tragedy. What happens is that he manufactures several situations that suggest to Othello that Desdemona has been unfaithful to him. And this, of course, humiliates Othello. And he, however, makes a number of efforts to try and fathom whether this is so. And he fails at every attempt. And I think that throughout the play, he resists the effort to respond to Iago's suggestion that he kill her, that he strangled her in her own bed where supposedly her sins were committed. And it's not till the very end that Othello apparently makes up his mind that he must do this. He's driven by all of the forces around him and this sense of profound embarrassment that he must act as a magistrate and destroy her.
Let's go to that film clip. Surprise, huh? Let's go to that film clip and see how Othello handles himself in that situation.
Poorly.
The death scene from Othello.
It is the cause, my soul. Let me not name it to you, you chaste stars. It is the cause. Yet I'll not shed her blood, nor scar that whiter skin of hers than snow, and smooth as monumental alabaster. Yet she must die, else she'll betray more men. Put out the light, and then put out the light. If I quench thee, thou flaming minister, I can again thy former light restore, should I repent me. But once put out thy light, thou cunning pattern of excelling nature, I know not where is that Promethean heat that can thy light relume. When I have plucked the rose, I cannot give it vital growth again. It needs must wither. I smell it on the tree. Oh, balmy breath that dost almost persuade justice to break her sword. One more, one more. Be thus when thou art dead, and I will kill thee and love thee after. One more, and this the last. So sweet, was ne'er so fatal. I must weep, but they are cruel tears. This sorrow's heavenly. It strikes where it doth love. She wakes.
Who's there? Othello.
Aye, Desdemona.
Will you come to bed, my lord?
Have you prayed tonight, Desdemona?
Aye, my lord.
If you bethink yourself of any crime, unreconciled as yet to heaven and grace, solicit for it straight.
Alack, my lord, what may you mean by that?
Well, do it and be brief. I will walk by. I would not kill thy unprepared spirit. No, heaven forfend, I would not kill thy soul.
Talk you of killing.
Aye, I do.
And heaven have mercy on me.
Amen. With all my heart.
I'm not sure if they're happy that you did murder her or what, although they didn't see the death scene.
No, well, it does take place. And much to his regret, he finds that he was wrong in having accepted the word of the man who appeared to be his best friend, but who was really out to destroy him. And that's an old, old story.
Right. How different is it playing Othello here in San Diego at the Globe compared to playing it in Europe?
Well, not much different, except certainly the players are different, and the time slot was a little different. This is quite another part of the world, one might say. The responses have been very warm here, and they were very warm in Europe. I think there's a greater hunger here to see Shakespeare because they don't get as much of it as, let's say, people of England who are more accustomed to that as being a part of their culture, their daily diet. So that's the difference, essentially.
Speaking of hunger, right after this we'll get a chance to see William Marshall in a few scenes from Blacula, which many of you will remember. So stay with us, won't you? Welcome back to Inside Black Hollywood. We're sitting here talking to William Marshall, who is not only a theatrical performer, but also a motion picture star. And William, in following your career, I noticed that you are very particular about the properties that you choose. And several of the properties that you have performed in motion pictures have been Blacula, with the sequel which would be Scream, Blacula, Scream. Why did you come about to choosing those two properties? What attracted you to them?
Well, number one, they were offered to me by the producer, and after having read them, I thought that they really were such garbage that I needed to do something, if I could, to raise the level of the quality of it. And I was allowed to do that. I must give all credit to American International for permitting that thing to happen. Blacula is a man who came from Africa, yes, and he was in Transylvania, not knowing that he was in the presence of a vampire, on the business of his people, that is to say, to put an end to slavery. And in the original story, that was not there, so that was one of the investments I was allowed to make. So together with Vanetta McGee, who played my wife, we were there as two diplomats to try and convince them that this was a condition that needed to be ended.
How was Scream, Blacula, Scream the follow-up? What was the storyline there?
Well, I don't think it was quite as exciting because most of the riches had already been dealt with in the first story. But he had been brought back to life, and he was miserable because he did not want to be a vampire. I guess that's one of the unusual aspects of it, because most vampires, I guess, enjoy being vampires.
I think that we can see that in the film clip that we do have. In the second film, Scream, Blacula, Scream, Pamela Greer was your co-star, yes. And we have a scene from that really shows the sensitivity of Blacula. We'd like to see that now from Scream, Blacula, Scream.
Lisa.
No.
Please, you mustn't be frightened.
Stay away.
Please. I could never harm you.
Don't touch me!
But you've got to help me. No, don't refuse me now. I need you.
Give away!
Mama Waldy.
The name is Blacula!
Well, I must say you're far more handsomer than I thought you would be.
Well, I thank you, but I think I'd have to be. I'm just getting born.
That's very possible.
He's certainly a strange dude.
He's a little weird, just a little bit. In doing things like Blacula, now I know that you're involved in a new film property called King Christophe, which King Christophe is the king of Haiti, which is completely different from the horror genre type movies that you've been doing. What is King Christophe about, and why are you doing it? Because you're doing the producing of this, right?
Well, there's been such a spate of films that have dealt in some small measure with the lives of black Americans, black folk in general, that have not really represented the people in a light that is, in essence, representative. It hasn't dealt, let's say, with the riches of our history. They've just been films that yesterday were populated with white actors, and today they're populated with black actors, with a little slice of black funk, you might say, thrown in. And I think it's very vital to illustrate, certainly in film, moving pictures where we see people having social intercourse with one another, to illustrate the degree to which black people have been important to the growth of this and other civilizations. So we have a rich history, and it should be put on film, the great window of the world. So I came to know about King Christophe, who certainly did not become a king overnight. In fact, as a boy, he became a slave and a part of the French colonies as such, and one of many who helped to make French France one of the wealthiest countries on earth. And then came the French Revolution, and shortly after that, the revolt of some 500,000 black people there in Haiti. And they were responsible for the only successful slave revolt in recorded history. That is to say, they drove the masters, as it were, from the land and built on that land an independent kingdom, and then later an independent republic, which still stands.
And what you're telling me, and what I know about Hollywood, quote, in terms of what makes a good film for blacks, action and sex and violence and all that, I would guess that you would be having problems getting that financed.
It's impossible to go that particular route because they're not interested in, again, the riches of our heritage. I think they will, as soon as they realize that it will make money, they'll become very excited about it. But I think I'll have to go public. I'll have to make an appeal to people themselves, black people, white people, people of the third world, even the second and the first world, for that matter, and let them know that it's irresponsible of them, of me, of all of us, not to make every contribution possible to seeing that a film like that come into being, so that black children and white children, other children, know, again, of the contributions of this people and can look upon them with respect. So that's why we're about this film.
Since it will be a while before the film will all come to pass, I know we're overworking you, but would you please do a portion of King Christophe for us?
All right, I'd love to. I'd just like to say that in going public, I'd like to invite anybody who thinks that it's significant for a film of this sort to be made to get in touch with me. Maybe make a donation toward it. Someone suggested in an interview I had some months ago that if every black person or every person who thought that it should be made sent $1 into Box 21, San Fernando, California, that it could get made without any question whatsoever.
Okay.
So this is the image of the citadel of Christophe, as Christophe envisions it on the first anniversary of his kingdom. Yes, I respond to that thought. A heritage, only I would say a heritage of energy and pride. A pride. Why not? Look at that swelling breast of earth, where the earth pulls itself together, rising from its sleep, taking the first step out of chaos. Fearful slopes on which to build? Yes, precisely. This people must want, get something impossible, something against nature, against fate, against history, an improbable assault with our bare hands, an extravagant defiance conveyed in our wounded hands. Charge the sky, charge the sun's resting place. Make that the order of the day for the relief troops in the morning. Look, Bess, imagine erected upon that strange platform, turned toward the northern magnetic pole, 130 feet high with walls 20 feet thick, of lime and sugar pulp ash, of lime and bull's blood, a citadel. Not a palace, not a fortified castle to safeguard my well-being, but a citadel to safeguard the well-being of a whole people, built by the whole people, men and women, children, and the aged, built for the whole people. See, its head is in the clouds, its feet dig deep into the earth, its mouth spit gunfire far out to sea and deep into the valleys. It is a town, a fortress, a battleship of stone. Impregnable, impregnable. Yes, to each people its proper monuments. For this people that was to be kept on its knees, a monument is needed that will bring it to its feet, standing upright. And there it is, risen, on watch. It is lit up in the night. Its horn sounds through the fog, giving battle to the slave ships in their dread procession. My friends, the acrid salt and the black wine soaked up from the sand, we who were hurled ashore have seen that enigmatic prow, foam and blood in our nostrils, cut through the sea of shame. May my people, my black people, greet the odor of the tide of the future.
I would say that the audience liked that best of all, William.
I'm delighted.
I'd like to thank you very much for being my guest on Inside Black Hollywood, and also thank Pamela Peyton Wright, who played Desdemona at the Old Globe with you.
Right, and magnificently.
I am glad that your stay in San Diego was most enjoyable.
Thank you. And this is with the icing on the cake.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you for being my guest on Inside Black Hollywood. See you later.